What's up, guys? Today I want to talk about something that's kind of serious, which is a little bit different for this channel, but I think it's something that we all can relate to and struggle with on some level. And I've been thinking about doing this video for a little while, and despite that, please know this is not scripted, so it might be a little bit all over the place. Unlike our normal content here at Super Squad D, which the D stands for very professional. So professional, in fact, that I didn't think about what the D stood for. But today, the D stands for discussion. Because I want to have a discussion with you, not a one-sided video where I'm telling you something, but where we are interacting and sharing back and forth, because this is something that I think every collector or hobby enthusiast in geek culture deals with at some point. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the idea of hobby shaming. So it is no secret that comic books and action figures and video games, to a lesser degree, have not always been the most popular hobbies to take. Now, I grew up in the South where everybody loved football and hunting. That's kind of the thing. So I was born in the 80s, and so when I grew up, it was pre-Marvel movies. Really, it was before the big comic book boom, so not a lot of people were enjoying comics outside of what would be considered nerdy or geeky people. Certainly it was not the cool thing to do. And I kind of wanted to share with you guys about my thoughts and my experiences on how to deal with people who hobby shame you for things that you love. So a few notes before we jump into it. One, I'm not a counselor. This is not advice that I'm telling you because I think you should take it. I'm just sharing my experiences with you personally. You know, take it for what you will. And two, everybody's experiences are going to be a little bit different because everybody's personalities are different and everybody's people group, friend group that they deal with and interact with who might be a little more judgmental are also different. So I don't think this is necessarily a universal truth, but I do kind of want to share with you my heart and some thoughts I've had about this because I've been thinking about this, like I mentioned before, for a really long time, and I feel like I need to make a video about it because I think there's a lot of people out there who are experiencing this even today in 2021, which sucks and is stupid. What do I mean by hobby shaming? I mean simply someone making fun of you or making you feel bad for the things that you're into. You know, we could have a whole video and discussion about the idea of shame, but I'm very against the concept overall because I don't think that shame really convinces anybody to stop doing anything. It just makes you feel really bad about yourself. So it doesn't really have the effect that is intended by the person. Well, hopefully not the effect that's intended by the person, which is to get you to stop doing whatever it is you're doing. It's just not a good tool. It's terrible for parenting. It's bad in relationships. It's just overall not good. And it sucks to experience shame and to feel shame and for someone to put that on you. I think it's important when we talk about this topic to really break down some categories of people because the way that you respond to somebody who's hobby shaming you is and should be, I think, different based on who the person you're interacting with. So, for example, when I grew up in school, this was not a cool hobby. Like, people weren't like, ooh, cool, you're collecting comics. Now, I've always had the personality type that is overly confident, which we'll talk about in a second. I just have always had this idea that I'm going to do whatever I want, and if someone doesn't like it, like, that's their problem. But that's not everybody's personality, and I totally get that. And furthermore, sometimes that's not a good response to a loved one who obviously has a problem with whatever your hobbies are. So that personality type played a big role in how I let other people affect me because, again, this wasn't a cool hobby to be into at the time. And so I kind of had the response of like, hey man, screw you. If you don't like what I'm into, that's fine. That's your deal. But like, forget you. That's totally on you. And I think that is a healthy response to get to the point where you can say that to somebody who is an acquaintance or like a loose friend. Because let's be real, what's the difference in like this and watching sports or hunting or, you know, whatever it might be that is your hobby, golf? Nothing. I mean, when you break it down, almost every hobby costs money. Almost every hobby includes time commitment. And so really, there's nothing inherently wrong with this. And maybe you today need to hear that for the first time. There's nothing inherently wrong with collecting comics. In fact, there's a lot of us who love it and would encourage you to do it and think it's cool. There's also nothing inherently wrong with action figures. Again, there's gonna be a lot of people who are gonna say, well, those are for kids. Those comics or toys are for the kids. But forget those people. Because it's cool, man. And if you like it, good for you. So I think that's a very healthy response to have to somebody who would tell you it's not cool, because if there's someone who's not close and personal in your life, then you have the ability, maybe it's a coworker or someone else, you don't have to interact with them a lot or talk about it a lot, to just say, hey, look, man, I'm sorry you don't get it or understand it, but this is just kind of something I'm interested in, and I would love for you to give it a try, but if that's not for you, that's totally fine. I am gonna continue to enjoy this. Because I found that having those conversations, while maybe awkward at times, almost always end with the other person being like, ooh, yeah, I crossed the line, or I shouldn't have said that, especially as you grow older and become an adult. Now, I do recognize that it takes a certain level of confidence to be able to say that and to do that, to believe enough in yourself and to know that what you enjoy is cool, and not everybody has that. And I just want to say, we could spend a lot of time, and I could make a separate video about the idea of confidence, but let me just say that confidence is not something you're born with, and it's certainly not something that is natural to most people. It absolutely is a choice. Confidence is absolutely telling yourself, hey, I can do this, or I am okay, or this hobby, in this instance, this hobby is cool. And that's a choice that you have to make sometimes multiple times a day, a week, a year, you know, as time goes on. You have to practice the art of confidence by telling yourself that and then choosing to believe it and then acting on it. Those are kind of the steps of confidence. And again, we could talk more about confidence at a later date, but you do have to have a certain level of confidence to be able to tell somebody that. Like, hey, if it's not right for you, no big deal. But for me, this is something that I'm interested in. As we start to narrow the scope of people in your life and we start to look at how you interact with people who are important to you, that's where it gets a little more difficult. And depending on the person and depending on the people, your response might be different. So I know a lot of you people out there maybe have not had family who really understands or gets it, because again, they have these preconceived notions that are completely on them and nothing on you, which is that comic books or toys or whatever it is for children, and you should grow up and not enjoy those and instead enjoy football or golf or whatever it is. But let me tell you, that's an antiquated way to think. That is absolutely not true. It can be really tough when it's someone you have to interact with on a daily basis. So whether it's your mom or your dad or your siblings, we're gonna leave spouses out for just a second, but a direct coworker, someone that you have to interact with on a daily basis, that can be really challenging because you may be feeling a lot of judgment from them, or you may be having these awkward moments where they're putting down whatever it is you're interested in. And to those people, I say, maybe the screw you response, I'm into what I'm into, is not the best way to respond, because these are people that you're going to have to interact with on a daily basis and continue to interact with, and you want to understand. It's not about necessarily just sending the message that you don't care what they think. It's about helping them understand that their behavior and the way they are speaking to you is unacceptable and inappropriate and is not something that they should be doing, and you don't want them to continue doing it. And so that's where I think that there's a longer conversation that needs to be had, which is, I get it, you don't understand this. Let me help you understand why I'm interested in this hobby. Let me tell you what I like about it, how it makes me feel, the things that I appreciate from it. And if you don't get it, that's okay, because you're entitled to like whatever you like, but you know, it really hurts me when you say those things. You know what? It really puts me in a bad mood, or it affects me negatively. And I know you love me because you're my mom or my dad or you're my sibling, but when you say these things and you talk about this in this way, it makes me feel like this. And that is really not cool. And I don't think that's your intent, but that's how it makes me feel. Those are the types of conversations you can have. And I think one thing to note there is assuming positive intent. And that can be really hard when you're going into something where you feel someone disapproves or disagrees with something about who you are. But assuming positive intent, meaning you want to assume that they want what's best for you because they're someone who's close to you in your life, that they care about you. And because of that, if you explain to them with that positive intent, calmly and rationally, why you're interested in this and that you really would like them to not continue to say those types of things, and give them the opportunity to just say nothing at all. Like, you don't have to embrace what I'm into. You don't have to be a part of it. Keep your mouth shut. Like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. I think those are the conversations that make sense to have with those kinds of people in your life. Now, the hardest people to communicate with are spouses. Whether it's your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your husband, your wife, these are the people who are the most important to you, and the people who you let know an intimate part of yourself. Like, you want to be as open and vulnerable with them as possible. And this and this may not be popular to say, this is where it's gonna actually take a little give on your part, because you don't fully have the ability to just say, screw you, this is what I'm into. If it's a husband or wife, like, you are sharing a life together. You are sharing, more than likely, finances as well as a home and life goals, and you want to grow together and closer with one another. And so I think that's where you really need to have some serious conversations about what your spouse or your partner's hang up is, what they are unhappy about, what about it don't they like. Again, these are people that you want to give the most positive intent to know they love you and care about you, and they're not trying to punish you, but there's clearly something about it that they don't like. And that very well may be something they need to get over. It might be that they don't like the way it looks, the appeal of it. They don't like that you spend so much time doing it. They don't like that it costs so much money. And those are things that I think you really need to have some serious conversations and give some serious thought to what areas you could compromise. Compromise? What? How could you? That's a terrible word in 2021. Stick to your principles and draw your line in the sand and die by it. No, I think it's important. Every relationship involves some form of compromise. Now, does that mean that I'm telling you to give up the hobby? Absolutely not. But what I am saying is, if there's a way to meet in the middle with your spouse where you could say, look, you're right, I do spend too much money on this. Or look, you're right, you know what, I've been reading, or I've been playing with these toys, or taking pictures when I should have been spending time with family. I will try to limit it to this, or I will try to stick to this, or I know you don't like the way it looks, and gosh, I don't really care about that thing, but you're embarrassed a little bit of it, and so because of that, I will try to keep it in one section of the house, or I'll try to not have my books out when other people are over as best as possible. You know, there's tons of different ways you could show your spouse that you care and that you are trying to meet them in the middle without giving up something that you love about yourself. Because ultimately, they gotta come to you as well as you have to go to them. What about the rare situation in which someone just says, I don't get it, I hate it, I think you need to quit because that's stupid. If that is your friend, you could say, screw you. If that is a family member or like a close coworker, you could say, hey, look, at the end of the day, this is my life, but if I can do what I want, so you know what, I'm just gonna keep doing this. But if that's a spouse, and that is your spouse's like ultimatum line in the sand, I would absolutely recommend counseling. Now, counseling sounds terrible. To some people, you're like, oh no, counseling is horrible. That means we have problems. Counseling is awesome. And counseling is great because it gets a neutral third party involved to help you both see sides of something. And maybe that's what your spouse needs. Maybe your spouse needs a neutral third party to look at it objectively and to tell your spouse, hey, it's totally fine. Like, they're just reading comic books. They're just collecting some toys. In moderation, it's totally fine. Not every spouse is gonna go for that, but I do think that is a really good solution for a lot of people who find themselves at an impossible crossroads when their spouse is just unwilling to give anything. Again, remember, I do think that you as a collector or a hobby enthusiast should give some and try to find some common ground and meet in the middle. Because let's be real, most spouses or partners are not gonna be interested in what you're interested in. Opposites attract a lot of the times, and my wife is not extremely interested in comic books or video games or anything like that. So we have other shared common hobbies, but this is one that kind of she lets me do on my own, which is totally fine. We have a great working marriage in which we both mutually understand and respect each other's hobbies, and she is nothing but supportive of me. But that came from a lot of dialogue and a lot of conversations and a lot of discussions. Anyway, guys, that's the video. It was a serious video. It was kind of long, longer than I thought it was gonna be. And really, I feel like we just scratched the surface. This is the first Tyler Talk, which is like a TED Talk, but it's, instead of TED, it's Tyler. I don't know if you guys are first timers here at Super Squad D, but we usually talk about books, comic books, video games, and we do live streams. If you like what you see and you want to see more, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let me know what you thought of this video. I'd love to know your thoughts and your experiences on how to deal with people who hobby shame you, as well as if you like this more serious type of discussion, let me know in the comments below. I would love to continue to do some of these occasionally, so just let me know what you think. Anyway, guys, till next time, peace.
Yippee!